Welcome back. We're still with the Minister for Works, Architect Mike Onolememen. You're welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Once again. Well, we're left off now with the project and how you intend handling all of this. But let's delve into specifically now the Enugu-Port Harcourt Road, which many, of course, seem to say that it has remained in a poor state for quite a long while, really. And we know that the President recently flagged off a bar segment on that road. And so what are we looking at as regards the completion of this project?
Well, Enugu-Port Harcourt Expressway truly was in a bad shape. About 2 years ago, it was virtually impassable because that road was built about 30 years ago. When that road was first built, about that time, I recall I was at the University of Nigeria Enugu campus doing my postgraduate degree in architecture. And I had the privilege of driving that road from Enugu to Port Harcourt, so I'm very familiar with that road. However, over the years, no major maintenance work took place along that road. Because for you to sustain the life of a road design, of a road alignment, you need to carry out periodic maintenance on them.
And that's what we're lacking.
Yeah, when you design a road, when you build a road like the Enugu-Port Harcourt Expressway, after the first 10 years, you ought to carry out an asphalt overlay on the entire alignment. That didn't happen after the first 10 years. It still didn't happen after 20 years, and it didn't happen after 30 years. So the road was left to collapse. And it was such an unfortunate incident, but however, that was the state we made the road when we came in 2011. And of course, we assessed the situation. Of course, we didn't prepare the budget for 2011, so we inherited the budget in July. And of course, a number of projects were ongoing across the country. And on the Enugu-Port Harcourt Expressway, there was no ongoing project on that road at the time. So in 2012, we budgeted for the assessment, pavement assessment, and design of the rehabilitation of the work on Enugu-Port Harcourt. And of course, we also knew, because of the level of budgeting that was possible for one single road at a time, we knew we needed to face construction work on that road. So the rehabilitation of the Enugu-Port Harcourt road was therefore planned to be executed in 4 phases. We had a phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and phase 4. So what we did was to go to the worst part of the road, worst section of the road that traversed Abuja State at the time, and decided to first tackle the level of dilapidation of the road, because it was in such a discrepant situation that I drove through it and I said something must be done. And in 2013, we awarded the works. The first section from Longpata to Umuahia, we awarded it to Setraco, Nigeria Limited. And the second section from Umuahia Towers to Aba, we awarded to Arab contractors. I had the privilege of inspecting the work 2 weeks ago on my way to the commissioning, or rather after the commissioning of the newly rehabilitated Enugu, Abakaliki, Ogoja, Ikom, Umfum to the Cameroon borders road, spanning about 240 kilometers. And I was impressed with the progress they have made. Then during the trip, on behalf of Mr. President, I flagged up the Aba-Port Harcourt session, which today is the worst part of that alignment. And I also flagged up the session from Enugu to Longpata. And as we speak, both contractors are on site working, which means the entire corridor from Enugu to Port Harcourt is being catered for. I can assure, based on the level of work that has been accomplished and based on the completion time frame of the contractors that have just gone to site 2 weeks ago, I can assure that that should be completed in about 24 months.
How much has been accomplished?
And the first 2 sessions that started, by and large, an average of about 60 kilometers per session, and by and large, between the 2 sessions, they have recorded about 50 kilometers completed, are very nicely completed too.
Can you bring us up to speed with the second Niger Bridge?
Yeah, the second Niger Bridge, you'll recall the second Niger Bridge, the groundbreaking happened in March 2014. And following the groundbreaking, early works commenced on the bridge because unknown to many, that bridge was not procured as a normal EPC contract. It was procured as a public-private partnership transaction. In other words, a concessionaire emerged, which is the NSIA Julius Berger Consortium. They emerged as the preferred concessionaire. And of course, Julius Berger Nigeria Limited is the main civil engineering contractor for the bridge. Once the early work phase 1 were completed, early work phase 2 started, and part of early work phase 2 was the commencement of actual work at the site of the second Niger Bridge. Again, about 5 weeks ago, I was privileged to inspect the ongoing works on the second Niger Bridge in company of Mr. President. And we saw for ourselves that the piling works of the bridge footings had commenced, and the dredging work on the alignment of the bridge was also ongoing. And of course, we drove to the location of the bridge, which is about 2 kilometers downstream the river Niger, through the access road to the site which Julius Berger had also prepared. And of course, I personally visited the fabrication yard of Julius Berger before Mr. President's arrival, and I saw for myself all that was going on, all sorts of things being fabricated and all that. So the work is going on well. That project, when it was concessioned to Julius Berger, it was estimated that it was going to take 48 months to complete. And we are in March, so out of the 48 months, they have spent 12 months, and it is still work in progress. So
we're keeping tabs on that, but in the meantime, you have about 2 bills you're trying to push. The National Road Fund, the Federal Road Authority. What are we going to benefit from all of that?
Well, I'm happy to say that both bills, the Federal Road Authority bill and the National Road Fund, have been passed. They are approved by the Federal Executive Council, and they have been transmitted to the National Assembly for enactment into law. In fact, those bills, for the first time, Nigeria is having the appropriate institutions that is specific to the road sector the world over.
You're referring to?
The National Road Fund bill and the Federal Roads Authority. In fact, there is nowhere in the world, I mean, in most of the civilized world and in countries where they have done well road development, the road development is under a bureaucracy like that of the ministry. So we were very determined to remove road development from the federal bureaucracy and give it to the professionals who will professionally manage road development in the country. It has been a long battle that dates back to 1994 when General Sani Abacha was the head of state in this country. A number of multilateral agencies came together to fund a conference for African countries on road development. And one of the takeaways from that conference, which was incidentally hosted by the Federal Ministry of Work at the time here in Abuja, was that African countries should establish road authorities and road funds so that they can have the appropriate institution that will drive road development in their country. One of the benefits is that with the appropriate institutions, you are able to implement policies and programs in line with international best practice, and you're able to tap into a number of development funds around the country. In fact, in 2009, the World Bank came to Nigeria and had discussions with the Federal Ministry of Work and the Federal Ministry of Finance and the federal government, and decided to do a pilot case of what should happen when we have appropriate institutions for road development in the country. And they gave us an IDA credit of about $330 million. The Africa Development Bank gave another $110 million. The Japanese International Cooperation Agency also gave some money, about $20 million, for capacity building towards the same venture. And they selected a few projects to see how road development should be in our country. One of the projects was the Enugu-Abakaliki Ogoja Junction Ikom Ufun Road, which I just mentioned About 2 weeks ago, I went to commission. It's about 240 kilometers because the road traverses through the southeast to the borders with the Cameroon. And in developing that road, international best practice was adhered to, and that is one of the best alignment we have in this country. There was no political interference in the development of that road. In fact, communities along the corridor not only benefited just from the reconstruction of the road alone, there were also social projects that were executed, like building of new markets along the road, processing means where the communities, the agrarian communities in those areas could add value to their produce. Schools were developed, boreholes were sunk, community halls were built and all that. It gave the people some sense of belonging. And that is as it should be. I mean, it was so community friendly that the people couldn't believe it.
So these bills actually will ensure this will happen?
Honestly, will revolutionize road development in Nigeria. That is why we are very upbeat about it, and we do hope that the National Assembly will pass the bill before the end of this current assembly.
All right, thank you very much for your time, Architect Mike Onolememen. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. You're welcome.
Well, thank you very much for your comments. You can be a part of the program by sharing your experience with us using the address and Twitter handle on your screen. And you can also let us know anything happening within your locality, especially if you're within the nation's capital. And don't forget, view the program on youtube.com/channelsweb/videos. Make your comments after viewing the current video, as well as older episodes of the program. Remember to include your name and where you're writing in from. Thank you for watching this week. I'm Gloria Umezuki. See you again.